Hey, this is the Rich Brooks, author of The Lead Machine, and I am thrilled to be back for a second time on the 360 Entrepreneur with Jan Ilunga.
Man, I can't believe I'm about to say this. This is episode 200, and today we talk about digital marketing for small businesses. Here we go.
Welcome to the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast, the show for entrepreneurs and small business owners who dream big and want to do bigger. Join some of the world's top entrepreneurs, internet marketers, and best-selling authors as they share their inspiring stories, their struggles, and give actionable tips that will help you build, grow, and promote your online business. Here's your host, Yanni Lunga.
Hey, welcome to this special episode of the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast. Episode 200. Episode 200 is unbelievable. I really can't wrap my head about the fact that episode 200 is here. I'm really excited about the topic of today, number one, and number two, about who's joining us. Before we dive into the interview, I just want to take a second to actually thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being with me week after week, month after month, year after year. I'm making you a promise that I'm going to keep doing my best to bring you the top entrepreneurs and digital marketers in the world that have incredible, valuable stories, advice, strategies, and resources to share with you. Today, as I said, we have a special guest because it's actually a returning guest. Rich Brooks was here quite some time ago, and I'm really excited about this interview. I tell you, this is probably one of the best interviews I've ever done. Not so much that I've done a good job, but for the fact that Rich really knocked it out of the park. The show notes for today's episode are over at yanilunga.com/episode 200. All right, time to celebrate. Here is the interview with Rich Brooks from agentsofchange.com. I'm so excited about who's here with us, and these type of episodes don't come around quite often. It doesn't happen every week that we have a returning guest, but that is definitely the case today. He's a digital marketing expert and founder of Agents of Change, conference that is all about search, social, and mobile. He also discusses those topics, so search, social, mobile, digital marketing, on the Agents of Change podcast. And now, compared to last time he was here on the show, there is something new. Now he's also an author. His first book is called The Lead Machine, The Small Business Guide to Digital Marketing. And you guessed it, he's here with us. I'm so thrilled to welcome back on the show the one and only Rich Brooks. Rich, how's it going?
It's going great, Jan. Thanks so much for having me back. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And I said it, you've been doing so many things since the last time you were here. And now you're an author. So congratulations, first and foremost.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The question I have to ask you before we dive into today's content is, how does it feel to be an author? How has your author journey been so far?
It's been great. I mean, this is something that I've wanted to do since 2010, probably before, but that was like the first time it made the list of, things I want to accomplish this year. So, I got a lot of false starts. And so finally, I think it was at the end of Social Media Marketing World last year, I realized that if I really wanted to take the next step in my entrepreneurial journey, I needed to have a book, an actual physical book that people could turn to with my name on it. And, it was a journey. It was a lot of work, but it was good to get all of that information out into a physical product that I can share with people. And of course, it's also available in Kindle too, because, this is 2017,
Right.
but it's nice to actually have this physical product too. And it's been great, and the reaction's been great, and the process was a lot of fun. It was a learning experience. I hope to make it a little bit smoother. The writing was easy, but then there's the editing, and then there's the promotion. And I can't say that I nailed everything, but I've definitely learned a lot during this journey.
Nice. And I like the attitude, Rich, where you said, obviously, it was a first-time thing, so there is always room for improvement. And I have to be honest with you, Rich, because we were talking before the interview by email and stuff, I started reading your book, and I was To say that I was impressed, I think is an understatement.
Well, thank you, Jan. I appreciate that.
No, you're very welcome because, I mean, when I read the title, The Lead Machine, I thought it was like pretty intuitive and, it's a guide. But then when I saw what you actually cover in the guide, like it's so in depth, it's really exhaustive, and it really covers so many components or so many pieces of the puzzle that is digital marketing. So I have to say thank you, Rich, for writing something like you did. And I'm sure it's going to impact quite a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners for sure.
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, that was the point of it. I've been doing this for 20 years. Definitely one of the older guys who's doing this. And, after 20 years, I probably worked with about 500 different companies. And, my day job is owner of Flight New Media. We're a digital agency in Portland, Maine. And so we get a lot of different types of businesses. I mean, in the last few weeks, we've signed up one company that does septics for houses and another one that sells tickets to the symphony, so, and that's, and we do solopreneurs and we do healthcare. I mean, it's such a wide range. But what I found is at the end of the day, what businesses really need from their websites are leads. And when I started kind of using that as the right filter, everything started to fall into place. And in fact, I had been talking about, in the book, I introduced it as the B.A.R.E. Essentials of Digital Marketing, B.A.R.E. I've been talking about that for years, but I never come up with B.A.R.E. Essentials. Like I was calling it different things. And once I came up with that acronym, again, things just started to fall into place. What I realized is most businesses need that framework. And that framework is flexible enough that whether you're a pizza parlor or selling septic tanks or selling tickets, the bottom line is that framework can work for you to help you understand, organize, and optimize your business's digital marketing needs.
I love it. And in the book, Rich, you said it that leads are to businesses what water is to fishes, right? So we should really focus on leads when it comes to pretty much anything we do when it comes to digital marketing.
It's definitely true. And I think a lot of us get caught up in what is referred to as vanity metrics.
Yeah.
And understandably so. Like, I, of course, notice, like if I post something, how many likes, how many comments, how many shares it gets, that's just natural. But to get too caught up in that, if you don't have a plan for, well, how do I take those likes and turn them into leads? That then becomes a problem. So you need to always be looking at your bottom line if you're responsible for that sort of thing. For Flight New Media, we need to find small businesses and marketers who are interested in web design, SEO, social media. For the Agents of Change conference that we put on, I need to find people who are interested in learning more about these subjects and either can physically come to Portland, Maine, or are interested in a virtual pass. So these are the things that we need, and then everything comes from that. And that's why I come up with that acronym of the B.A.R.E. Essentials of Digital Marketing. It's the idea of build, attract, retain, and evaluate. You need to have that platform, which is what we talk about in the build section. And this is really how the book is organized for your listeners. It's build, attract, retain, evaluate, B.A.R.E. Attract is all about how do we drive traffic to that website, and not just any traffic, but qualified traffic. So we're talking about search, we're talking about social, we're talking about digital ads. Retain is the fact that, people come to our website and they're checking us out, but they're also checking out the competition. And we're not the only one who has this product or service. So how do we stay in touch with them after they've left? And we put a focus on email marketing and also retargeting in that section. And then in the last section, we just talk about evaluate, like should you be measuring? What are the tools that you can use? What are the most important reports within Google Analytics? Outside of Google Analytics, what kind of tools do you have? So there's a lot going on there. But if you can pay attention to some of each of those 4 sections and really focus on that, you are bound to succeed.
I love it. Rich, you're getting me fired up, and thank you. Before we continue here, I just want to point out one thing. If you're here with Rich Brooks and I, then you probably know what's coming. I'm going to make sure to link to everything Rich and I are talking about in the show notes. So there you're going to find the link to the Agents of Change podcast and the book, obviously, The Lead Machine, the Small Business Guide to Digital Marketing. All right, Rich, so you said the 4 pillars of the book. B.A.R.E, so build, attract, retain, evaluate, and you already touched upon a few things. What would you say if obviously it goes without saying that each of these 4 topics in itself could be a topic for an entire episode or even a series of episodes. But what would you say if we were to go through each of the steps? So build, attract, retain, evaluate. And I was thinking if you want to either share a couple of things for build, attract, retain, evaluate for your own businesses, for example, or if perhaps you have any other example that you want to share. So what are some of the things that fall under build, attract, retain, and evaluate?
Sure, I can try and do that. And I'll either use my examples or if I can think of a client we've worked with recently.
Sounds good.
So build is where we start. And it's because no matter what else we do in social, in search, in creating content, in real world networking, we're always trying to drive people back to our property. Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing. It's like, it's great to have a big following on Twitter or Facebook, but we've seen what happens when Facebook changes its algorithm. Right. So it's really important to build something on your own property. And that's where having your own website is critically important. And in the build section, we talk a lot about identifying who your ideal customer is. Mm-hmm. And the reason I spend a lot of time on that is because too many websites are about the company and not about the client. And that's a problem. So our website, I could talk about how amazing we are, how long we've been in business, how we design the most beautiful websites ever, and how everything is mobile friendly. And our clients ultimately care about that. But first, they just want to make sure that we're listening.
Right.
So a lot of the language on the website is about the customer, the prospect, the client. We talk about their pain points. And only when we show them that we understand their pain points are they even going to start to listen to us. So there are definitely a lot of things that you need to do right when it comes to your website. It needs to be professionally designed, whatever that means to you. It needs to be fast loading. That's a big thing these days. It needs to be responsive so it looks good on mobile devices. I'm a huge proponent of content management systems so you can manage the site yourself. Right. A huge fan of WordPress personally. Mm-hmm. So those are all the things you need to make sure you have in place so that you can turn prospects into leads. And I'd also suggest that not everybody's going to be ready, depending on your product, to make a buying decision the second they get there. Mm-hmm. So that's why you need to have some sort of lead magnet to get them to opt into an email newsletter. So a lot of the build of the website is about designing for conversions. Design is something like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. But what I'm talking about when I talk about design is, are you leading people down the path? Are you creating an easy to follow map that they can get help from? Because if your website's confusing, if there's too many offers, if there's too many bells and whistles to distract people, they're just going to click the back button. So really think about your website as a very simple guided tour to get people to what they need. So that's kind of what Build is all about. Simplify that message on your website. Your blog is a great place to put a lot of information, but your website proper should really be clean and lead people to take a desired step. Pick up the phone, fill out a contact form, sign up for an email newsletter, download this article, whatever it may be. Buy now. That's the purpose of Build.
Man, what you just shared with us, I think it's so powerful. And the reason why I like it so much is that it doesn't really matter what business one is running. I mean, if you're here with Rich and I, whether you're starting out, you've been in business for 20 years, like Rich has, you heard what he said. Your site should be addressing your visitors first and foremost. And then there really has to be an easy to follow experience. And you mentioned a blog, Rich, and actually, how to create an effective business blog is what you and I talked about the first time you were here. So nice. I'll make sure to link to that episode in the show notes as well, because I remember that you had quite some ninja tips to share on the topic as well. So sorry that I stopped you, Rich. I just wanted to make a couple of comments here. All right. So that was for Build. Next is Attract.
Yes, Attract. And in the book, I talk about 3, because there's a million ways to drive people to your website. Mm-hmm. I'm focused mostly on the online ways. And the 3 biggest that I have found is search, social, and then digital ads. So like you said, each one of these could be like 10 episodes long. So I'm just going to try and say, from a search engine standpoint, I don't think people give search enough love. Like this is where you're probably going to get 2/3 of the new and returning, but especially the new clients, people coming to your website for the first time because they went to Google and they had a pain point. And then it's just about delivering that prospect to your site. So understanding search engine optimization, knowing what words your customers are using. Again, this is just really traditional stuff, like just understanding what your customers are struggling with. Then doing a little bit of research, maybe using a tool like Google Keyword Planner. Or if you've got a little money in the budget, I might recommend buying a subscription to Moz, moz.com. And they've got some tools in there that will help you find the right words. So if you're a plastic surgeon and you want to write about rhinoplasty, to find out, is it rhinoplasty you should be writing about or nose jobs? Understanding these concepts and understanding the words that your customers are using is critical to how much quality traffic you're going to get. And then, we kind of walk them through like, okay, so you've started to, you brainstorm your keyword phrases. And then you do use some online tools, either free or paid, to get a better understanding of how many people are actually searching for these terms and how much competition there is out there. So then all of a sudden you get that taken care of. And then you start putting them in critical places on your website, including page titles, page headers, inside the body copy, and then links from page to page. There's more than that, but that is critical. And what's nice about SEO is once you get it set up and you're following the evergreen rules, you will continue to get traffic from that. People are just going to continue to find that by doing the right searches at Google. So that's a big piece of it. Social media is a big piece of it, but I'm going to be honest, I think social media is a little bit overblown in terms of what people think they're going to get out of it these days. 5 years ago, social media was a lot easier to make a splash than it is today. And I know there's a lot of social media experts talking about how powerful it is. And it is, but those people are doing it 24/7. Like that's the focus of their business.
Right.
For most small businesses in the real world, it's a little bit more tricky. And obviously, if you're doing something like jewelry, then something like Instagram or Pinterest is going to be much more powerful for you, perhaps. If you get a visual product, then certainly social media can help. But, in other categories, it may be search is more important. So we talk about social, but in my mind, social is just about building awareness, building trust, and then hopefully leading people over to your site. And the last category is just digital ads. And I focus mostly on Facebook and Google ads, although there is a section on Twitter ads. And recently we ran some side-by-side comparisons here at Flight, and we found that we were getting a better buy from Twitter, which kind of surprised me.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, it was a one-time thing. I'd like to do a little bit more research. I'm not saying that it's in every category, but the ads on Twitter are cheaper. And if your audience is on Twitter, it can be very effective. Obviously, if they're not on Twitter, it's not going to help.
Yeah. Right.
But those are the three ways that we talk about in terms of driving qualified traffic to your website for conversion. I don't know if you had any questions on that or whether we want to jump over to retain.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that actually it's funny, Rich, you stressed, I should say, the importance of SEO, of search. And that's something I remember in our first interview that we did. I remember that you shared some actual tips on how to optimize, for example, blog posts. I remember that very, very specifically. You talked about keywords, the difference between the page title and the actual title that appears on Google. So if you're here with Rich and I again, and if you want to learn more about SEO for your own blog posts, then check out the show notes. And I mean, I want to say thank you, Rich, for giving us our reality check and for talking about the importance that SEO has first and foremost, and how other things like social media may follow that, but shouldn't be something that replace our focus on SEO. Because you said it, social media are very dynamic, things change, and we are building, if we focus on social media only, we are building our home on somebody else's property, as you said at the beginning here of the interview. So yeah, I just wanted to double down on what you said and the importance of focusing. And you even mentioned a couple of tools. So it's easy to get started even if we aren't any search wizards, right? Those tools are pretty intuitive.
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So we've covered build, attract, coming up, retain.
Yeah, so the retain section is all about staying in touch with somebody after they've left your website. And, for those of you who have been doing this as long as me, you may remember back in the 90s and early aughts where people would be like, check back often for updates. And of course, nobody ever checks back. The most effective tool in the retain category is definitely email marketing. And, I've got my own podcast. I've got about 180 episodes under my belt. And every social media expert who comes on, when we talk about the most important part of marketing, they talk about the importance of building your list. And for small businesses especially, it's so critical. I'm sure you agree with this, Jan.
Right.
So critical to build that list, to get that permission to deliver messages right into your prospect's inbox. I mean, that's what it's all about. That's where you can build up trust. I saw this quote recently from a guy named Brian Eisenberg, who's a conversion whiz, and he said, I'll paraphrase here because I don't have the quote in front of me, never forget, social is for reach, but email is for revenue. And that's
love it.
Absolutely true. I mean, the bottom line is if you want to make sales, you got to get people on your email list. So there's a lot of, in the book, we talk about how to build your list, and a lot of that comes down to finding the right lead magnet, getting people to give you their email address so that you can collect that and then and provide them with something of value. And then, what can you do to get your emails delivered and get people to take action? But email is critical. I can't find a business where there's not value in email marketing. And then the next thing is just retargeting. So we've all experienced this. You go to Amazon, you look at umbrellas, you don't buy the umbrella, you head on over to Facebook and there's the umbrella.
Right.
You go to CNN and there's the umbrella. You go to Fox News, there's the umbrella. No matter where you go on the web, there is that umbrella till you finally break down and buy it. Although I don't find it to be quite as cost effective as it used to be, it's still a very powerful tool, especially for a lot of industries. And it's a great way to stay in front of people, especially if they didn't bother to download your lead magnet and join your list. And to a lesser degree, and this is not one of my favorite ways to retain people, but if they are going to leave, another thing you can do is just try and get them to engage with you on social, find you on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. I don't think of those as the strongest tools when it comes to retain. I think those are good for, making that initial contact, but not necessarily quite as powerful for staying in touch. Depending on your industry, depending on how much energy you're putting into social, you may have different results.
Rich, I'm really enjoying this conversation. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you said that having done almost 200 interviews, you have interviewed many different experts. And still, when you ask them about, what is basically the one thing that really moves the needle, they talk about the importance of email marketing. And we have talked about this in the past several times, but I recently saw, it's funny we're talking about this because I recently saw an image, I think it was maybe from Adobe, that they basically had this graph that showed the ROI for I think it was ROI for $1 invested in several things. So there was like Facebook ads, banner ads, and things like that. And email had the highest ROI. I think it was $40 for each dollar invested in it.
Wow.
I think the second one, I don't remember if it was either 22 or 27, something like that, or even less. But I was shocked. And that I have to look for it and add it to the show notes, because when one sees that, it's really testament of what you have been talking about here over the last few minutes on why email matters. And do you happen to have any tips, any advice on maybe how to get people to take action when they are on somebody's email list?
That's a great question. Some of the things that email is evolving. So I would say if you want to get people to take action, and we're going to skip over how to get their emails actually into their inbox right now, but just like once they've opened that email. So a couple of things is it's got to be mobile friendly. Actually, it's got to be responsive design when it comes to email, because so many of us check our emails on our smartphones, and very often first thing in the morning. So I almost never send an email out until at least 12 o'clock East Coast time, because I know that then at least my West Coast subscribers are, at least getting into work. Maybe they've already cleared out their inbox before they see my inbox. I don't want to be one of 47 emails when they first wake up or get into work, because they're just going to go delete, delete, delete. I want to be there after they've cleared out their inbox. So that's one thing that I practice. I also am a big fan of only have one offer. So gone are the days of having a 2-column approach with like 27 different articles that they can read. Yes, there's still a place for some of those type of things, but if I'm looking to get somebody to take an action, I'm just going to ask them to do one thing. Click on one link, download one item, listen to one podcast, whatever it may be. There are different types of emails, but for me, in terms of getting somebody to take action, it's a big button. It tells them exactly what they're going to get for clicking on that button. It's valuable, and it just continues to build trust and make it easier for me when I'm ready to ask them for the sale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as you said, Rich, there are different moving parts to effective email marketing. But I wanted to ask you about this because I think that even here on the podcast, we've talked about lead generation and this and that, but I felt that maybe we haven't talked enough about getting people to take action. And it's interesting you talked about the fact that the format of the email. So not only should be mobile responsive, but even about the fact that it doesn't work anymore to include like links to 10 different articles, and we should really be laser focused. So with one email, we should have one goal, and that should be very clear. Okay, so we've covered the first 3 letters of the B.A.R.E formula. What about evaluate, Rich? What do you have for us?
So every website needs to have traffic reports, and I'm a big proponent of using Google Analytics. It is very powerful. It's absolutely free. And so we set that up for all of our websites when we get started with people. And then I usually check in with clients about a month after we launch their website and give them a tour of their own analytics so we can kind of see what's going on. It's one of those things where it's like everybody gets Google Analytics and then nobody actually uses it. And it's if you could just budget like 15 minutes a week to go in there and take a look at your analytics, it can really change your business. And I've seen this happen. Google Analytics is giving you such great information. And of course, there's the regular information it gives you, how many people are visiting, what pages they're going to. To a lesser degree than before, it tells you how people are finding you in terms of like what keywords. They're kind of, Google is more protective of that keyword information these days. And that just seems to be a trend in the industry. But, as you start to pay attention to it, one of the things that I've noticed is a few of our blog posts, and this never used to happen, but a few of our blog posts get more traffic than our homepage, which just blows me away. And so then when I take a look at these articles, it gives me a better, and then through some other reports that tell me like where we appear for certain search queries and what our click-through rate is for those, I start to see some trends. And so one of the things is we wrote an article, pretty exhaustive article on hashtag use. And so the thing is, though, we don't sell hashtags, but at the same time, we are getting thousands of visitors a month to this article. And I wish I had been a little bit more responsive on this, but when we look through it and we take a look at this, we're like, all right, well, and the bounce rate on this article is high, meaning people read the article and then they didn't do anything else. So then by evaluating this, by spending some time and really understanding what's going on, we're like, wow, we're getting a lot of interest in this. This is obviously, we kind of like hit a pain point explaining how hashtags are used. What's the value add that we can create on top of this that would get people onto our email list? So now we're developing kind of a cheat sheet for using hashtags in social media effectively. And hopefully as people read through that article, if they're interested enough and they're like, well, yeah, no, I want to do social media for my business. What's the best tactics today? They'll be willing to download that article and suddenly they'll be on our email list, and then we'll start to build trust with them over time that hopefully at some point in the future they'll want to do business with us.
Interesting. Very interesting what you just shared here, Rich, because actually I know somebody who faced a similar situation. So there is an Italian marketer who has a blog, and he blogs about digital marketing and things like that. But he had never focused on Instagram. And then he wrote some kind of, I don't remember if it was some ultimate guide to Instagram marketing or something like that in Italian. And he said the exact same thing you just shared with us. So that article alone was getting a lot of traffic, and in his case, his response was prompt enough, so he created a lead magnet, and then he also created a course that discusses Instagram marketing, and I know that he has been that funnel has been working out very well. And one thing I wanted to ask you, Rich, so you talked about the fact that, for example, well, first of all, Google Analytics, it's something we should really look at and not only have in our pocket. And you talked about the fact that with some of your clients, you have a call about a month afterwards and you give them a tour of Google Analytics. Are there Google Analytics there are so many different layers to it and things can get pretty technical, but are there a couple of parameters or something like that in the dashboard that you would encourage everybody to check, number one? And number two, how often would you say to check those? Is it something to do maybe weekly or monthly or quarterly?
Sure. And that's a great question, Jan. So in the book, I actually take you through like my favorite reports and what I think people should look at. But for right now, just to share with your audience, uh, if you look on the left-hand side, once you've logged in, there's like 8 different categories, but it's the bottom 4 that are going to be most important to you. And within there, and I don't have it in front of me, but the top one is something like audience. And that just gives you some insights into who's visiting your website, where they're coming from, what platform they're doing. In that area, I'm most interested in just some of the dashboard stuff, like is my traffic going up or is my traffic going down? And where exactly is my traffic coming from geographically in the world? Especially if I am geographically challenged in who I can do business with, I'm mostly interested in people coming from, say, either anywhere in the world or just the US or just New England, whatever it may be, because that's where my best traffic is coming from. So I want to focus on that traffic. I might even create a filter so I can look at just that traffic. Another thing that I tell people is once you've had Google Analytics running for a bit, I love to compare and contrast month to month, or even better, year to year. So I can take a look at the past 30 days, but then compare them to the same period a year ago and see, am I trending up or am I trending down? Or, that kind of gives me a sense of my overall direction. The next section, I want to say is called something like acquisition. And it's basically how did people find you? And that's where it breaks down into search, social, email marketing campaigns. And if you connect your Google Analytics to your Search Console, you can get a lot of reports there that tell you, like, for specific searches, like say for the hashtag searcher, what is a hashtag? What is your actual average ranking for that? And what is your click-through rate as well? And so that can give you some sense of how you're doing. And if there are some keywords that you want to rank well for and you're on the page 2, the reports can be filtered so that you can see just the times that you appear on the second page for the search results. And then maybe you go in and figure out what pages are ranking in the second page. And then you can just do some minor tweaks on those pages and push you into that first page of search results and therefore greatly increase the number of people who are going to click through to your website. So there's some really powerful reports in there as well. And then there's the next section, which is something like behavior, and that just tells you what pages people are going to and what kind of flow they're taking through the website. This can be important as well in just terms of giving you a sense of, what are the most valuable pages on your site. And the last section is conversions or goals. And what I tell people to do is set up some goals. And the simplest one, for example, on our site is when somebody fills out our contact form, they're taken to a thank you page. Well, we just measure how many people get to the thank you page, and then that, using Google Analytic goals, can tell us where is our best traffic coming from, if that's valuable to us. And of course it is, because if people fill out our contact form, it means that they're likely to want to do business with us.
Right.
So we measure that, we put a value to that, and then we can kind of see how much revenue our website is worth. For example, if the average website project is costing $10,000 and, we start to figure out, okay, well, we got 100 people who filled out our contact form, 10 of them ended up buying a website for us. So then we can go through and say, okay, well, every lead is worth $1,000, just doing some quick math, assuming that we're converting at that rate and that's continuous.
Right.
But then that, okay, well, to get somebody to fill out a contact form, that's worth $1,000 to my company. So now I can think about like how much energy I should put towards blogging, how much money I should put towards advertising, email marketing, so on and so forth.
Man, Rich, thank you so much. So there you have it. Some of the Google Analytics sections you may want to look at. And again, make sure to go to the show notes page and you find the links to everything, including Rich Brooks' new book, The Lead Machine, The Small Business Guide to Digital Marketing. And as Rich said, there is a section where he goes about that more in depth. So this is what the B.A.R.E formula is: build, attract, retain, evaluate. Rich, I want to say thank you so much. And I know you are on Twitter at The Rich Brooks. And to wrap up, I have to ask you 2 things. The first one is, if somebody would like to get in touch with you or give you a shout out or ask you a question, what would you say? Is Twitter the fastest way to do that?
Twitter's probably the easiest way to do it if they want to hit me up. And then if it's a longer conversation, we can always take it over to email. But yeah, just find me on Twitter at The Rich Brooks.
Great. And the final question, Rich, to wrap up this fantastic interview, is if you simply have any final remarks, anything else you want to share with us when it comes to building, attracting, retaining, and evaluating?
Well, you know what I'd like to do, Jan, is your audience is a great audience, and I'd like to just give them a chapter, at least, of the book, The Lead Machine. So why don't we do this? If you can put this in the show notes, or if you're listening right now, head on over to theagentsofchange.com/Jan, YANN. And there you'll find a place where you can download. It's a chapter actually on conversions and how to improve conversions on your website. So I think people get a value out of that, and then they can also get a taste of the book and decide if they want to grab the whole thing or if they got everything they need in that one chapter.
Wow, Rich, thank you so much. So absolutely, I'll link to that in the show notes. And really, it doesn't really matter what day it is, what month it is, what year it is. If the conversation Rich and I have had here was interesting, you want to learn more about his book, then you heard it. theagentsofchange.com/Jan, where you can get a chapter of the book. Rich, again, thank you so much for being back, number one, and number two, for simply rocking your second time here on the podcast. I really am grateful.
Jan, I really appreciate it, and I certainly appreciate the re-invite.
And we are back. You heard it. A lot of valuable tips from Rich. He mentioned his book, The Lead Machine. There is a chapter that you can get as well. We mentioned quite many different things. Everything we talked about today, including the past interviews Rich and I did, you're going to find all that good stuff in the show notes page over at janilunga.com/episode 200. This is it for today. No more fireworks. I'm definitely going to have a glass of champagne to celebrate this episode. Next week, we continue, obviously. And next week, we're going to talk about another very important topic for your business, outsourcing.
Thank you for listening to the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast. For more tips and tools, head over to www.janilunga.com.